Back here on HQ Spotlight, the quest to repeat starts now in Philly. Eagles OTAs are underway. So, of course, this is voluntary at this portion of the offseason, but there was a noticeable absence, perhaps raising some eyebrows. Bryce Huff was not present for Wednesday's voluntary OTA sessions. Of course, we got a new OC, so we're looking forward to what Kevin Patullo's offense looks like and how that's going to gel with Jalen Hurts. We have a lot to discuss when it comes to the Eagles. So for that, let's welcome in our NFL analysts, Douzable and Ran Carthon. We're going to talk some big storylines around the Eagles as OTAs are underway. We just saw some video there. Let's start with the biggest offseason losses. Ran, whose presence is going to be missed the most when it comes to this Eagles roster?
So I'll give you two guys. I'll go with Milton Williams and Josh Sweat. And here's why. Josh Sweat led the team last year in sacks with eight. And then if you look at what Milton Williams brought, he actually outsnapped Jordan Davis inside there, because if you look at most defenses nowadays, they play a lot more nickel, which is where Milton Williams came in and gave them a disruptive force inside. And then he also had 5 sacks last year, which finished third on the team. So I think they're going to miss these two guys, because if you looked at that Super Bowl and what put the pressure on Patrick Mahomes was that front four. And both of these guys that I just named were a big part of that, and they're no longer there.
Well, Ryan, I actually think they're going to be fine, because GM Howie Roseman does a really good job of giving young players a redshirt year. We saw that with Nolan Smith and him coming to his own last year in his second year. I'm going to liken it to a guy like Moro Ojomo, who had that same trajectory as Milton Williams. Remember, Milton Williams didn't become a full-time starter until this last year, where Moro Ojomo has been a spot starter, and now he'll take over from Milton Williams, and he came on strong in the playoffs. You talk about Josh Sweat leading them in sacks. Well, guys like Jalix Hunt, let's not forget they also signed Azeez Ojulari, who has had some health issues, but one thing he can do is get after the passer. Just in 11 games last year, 6 sacks. You go back to his rookie year, 8 sacks. So Howie Roseman does a really good job having subsequent depth on the team. Those are 2 big losses, but because he does a good job of giving guys redshirt year, I think they'll be fine up front.
Howie does a good job with depth. He also does a good job of somehow getting the biggest steal of the draft. We've seen it time and time again. So we're going from offseason losses to offseason additions. So, Ran, who is a new guy that they got in the offseason that's going to give this team a little bit of a boost?
So Lijay hit on it and how good Howie Roseman is at his job. And for Jacqueline and I's sake, I just want to throw in there that Howie Roseman is a Gator. So go Gators.
Go Gators. There. Even though he always gets all the Bulldogs, he always drafts all the dogs. But yes, he is a Gator. I digress.
But I want to say Jahad Campbell, the linebacker that they took in the first round. Now, if you know the history of the Philadelphia Eagles and their linebacker position, they've never really taken a guy in the first round. But why Jahad is different is because he is a bona fide playmaker, a lateral run chase and hit guy that's going to fit perfectly with Zach Bond as Nakobe Dean is recovering from injury. Ryan Wilson and I talked about it on the With the First Pick podcast. This inside linebacker position for Philly this year could be the best and most depth they've ever had at the inside linebacker position.
All right, so here we are again, another new season where, Jalen Hurts and the Eagles are coming off of a Super Bowl, and we have to talk about him gelling with the new OC because, of course, Kellen Moore takes that head coaching job in NOLA. We're not going to see the whole playbook at OTAs, gentlemen, but Lijay, kick us off. How do you expect Jalen Hurts and Kevin Patullo to kind of gel, and are you expecting it to be a smooth transition?
Yeah, that'll be the interesting thing, Jacqueline, because when you look at it, Kevin Patullo has never called plays. And Rand, you know that, right? It takes a rhythm to calling plays. You have to do it to get in a nice little rhythm. I go back to a few years ago in the 23 seasons after the Eagles were coming off the Super Bowl, and they elevated Brian Johnson as the offensive coordinator who was in the system with Nick Sirianni since 2021. And that was the year Jalen Hurts threw his most interceptions. He had 15 interceptions. It made Nick Sirianni pivot and go get somebody outside of the current staff in Kellen Moore. And he even saw with Kellen Moore in the first 4 games, they went 2-2, and the offense was up and down. It fluctuated on what it wanted to be. But after that bye week, they really realized, let's lean into this offensive line. Let's lean into this run game, and they got things going. So there's always an acclimation period when you bring in a new offensive coordinator. It'll be interesting to see this year because Kevin Patullo, again, very bright guy, was with me in New York in 2015 as a quarterback coach. this will be his first time calling plays. So there's going to be an acclimation period, but with as much talent as they have on the offensive line and with Saquon Barkley and those receivers, they should get things rolling pretty soon.
And Lige, to follow your point, I'm more interested in seeing what offense are they going to run. Are they going to run a Nick Sirianni offense that we've seen with Shane Steichen and those guys? Or are we going to follow what Kellen Moore did? And like you said, Kevin Patullo, he's never called plays, so we don't know what his real offensive philosophy is. But again, to your point in how they shifted to being more run dominated, if they were smart with the people in Philly are very bright people, I think you kind of stick with that Kellen Moore offense to keep this train rolling and allow this offense to stay in rhythm.
So, of course, there's a lot of questions about the offense, the OC job specifically, but also when it comes to cornerback, right? Because Darius Slay, he is no longer there, a veteran presence as well, even off the field. So, Ran, who is going to replace him? Who is going to take that role? Of course, you can't completely replace locker room guys and that veteran presence, but who do you think replaces Darius Slay?
I think you look at their draft class last year and who they took in the first and second round. You had Quinyon Mitchell and you have Cooper DeJean. Both of those guys played key roles for them down the stretch. And like Lige said, teams like Philly who are stacked with depth, they draft the way they draft because they don't have to force young guys out there. And both of these guys played key roles for them down the stretch and in the Super Bowl. And I think they're primed to take over and be key big-time players for them. And then don't forget Kelly Ringo, who's played a ton there. And so now you have a 3 DB set when you go nickel where you can play Quinyon and Ringo on the outside and then Cooper DeJean inside the nickel. So I think they're going to be fine there at the corner position.
Yeah, Ran, that's what I'm interested to see, right? Because Cooper DeJean at Iowa played so many positions, whether it was the slot nickel position where he played on the outside at corner, whether he played safety. And we saw last year when he got thrust into the lineup after that bye, this team really took off. He solidified himself as one of the better nickels in all of football. So does Vic Fangio give him an opportunity to play outside and maybe in nickel downs, kick him inside? You brought up Keely Ringo. He's a guy that spot started, so is Eli Ricks. Let's not also forget, they drafted Mac McWilliams in the 3rd round. Shout out UCF. He's a guy that has the flexibility to play outside and in that slot corner, and Adoree Jackson as well. So we talked about it earlier, Rand. Howie Roseman just does a really good job with depth. So if one guy goes down, they're going to have multiple guys behind him. But my question mark is, because Cooper DeJean plays such a high level in the slot, do they potentially move him outside and then maybe kick him inside on passing downs?
We're talking about the Eagles. We've already gotten like 2 or 3 Go Gators and a shout out UCF halfway through this segment, gentlemen. Okay, we want to get to the schedule prediction because we know the Eagles, they're starting right out the gate. It's going to be exciting against their NFC East rival and America's team, the Cowboys. So if we pull up the schedule, Lige, we want you to walk us through and give us your schedule prediction for the defending champs.
Yeah, you see it right there at the bottom of the screen, 12-5. The issue is when you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you win the Super Bowl and you win your division, you play a first-place schedule. So when you play teams in other conferences, you play the number 1 team in that conference. And I want to look at those last 3 games because that could tell the tape whether the Philadelphia Eagles repeat as division champions or the Commanders decide to dethrone them in the NFC East because they go to the Commanders, play at the Bills, and then they have the Commanders at home. This is a team that's well tested, but they have a grueling schedule. They played 10 games versus teams that made the playoffs last year. 7 of those are on the road. Again, this team is not deficient of talent. Great offensive line, great defensive line, and that's how you win games. Ren can speak on that as well. They have a Super Bowl MVP quarterback and Jalen Hurts, and probably the best running back in football in Saquon Barkley. So I have them winning 12 games and winning the division again this year.
And we're not going to tell Haley that you have the Cowboys getting a giant L in game 1 of the season, but
facts is facts.
Yeah, it is what it is. If we dive deeper into the schedule and talk about some takeaways and something that we've noticed, no back-to-back home games. So, Rand, how difficult is that if you're kind of always on the road and you don't really have a good stretch of time that you're on your home field?
So I'll start with this, and Lige knows this from our time in San Francisco. When you're constantly flip-flopping the schedule, because some of these games, may be West Coast games, and you may travel a day early, so your travel there is different, and so that takes a toll on you throughout the season. And let's not kid ourselves here. Philadelphia has a home field advantage when they're playing at the Link, which is one of the more crazy environments to bring an opponent into. And for you to have to alternate that every week doesn't allow you nor your fan base to really get in a rhythm.
And Lige, just to piggyback too here off of that, because another takeaway is that at some point throughout the season, the Eagles are going to play on every single day but Tuesday and Wednesday. So as a player, you know, we know that players have voiced their concerns, right, for Monday night games and Thursday night, and talking about the recovery and how that plays a factor. But if we do have, you know, Thursday night games, a Black Friday game, Saturday, Sunday, I mean, put yourself, if you are a player right now, in their shoes. How difficult is that when you're talking about trying to have a consistent schedule and it's all over the place, how much wear and tear that can be on a player's body?
Yeah, Jacqueline, so much for player safety, right? When you talk about it, like, as a player, we all have a rhythm in how we go through the week, right? Monday we come in, depending on what team you are, you get a quick lift, try to get some of that soreness out. You also go over the film from Sunday. Tuesday is the off day, the recovery day. You're going to get your massages, your ART work. You're going to get your muscle activation work. And Wednesday, you really come in, and that's the first day you start game planning for the opponent that you're going to play on that Sunday. So Wednesday and Thursday are heavy work days, not only in the classroom, but on the field as well. But now you're talking about teams shortening that rest time. So you go from a 6-day rest period to a 3-day rest period when you play on Thursday, to a 4-day rest period when you play on Friday, to a 5-day rest period when you play on Saturday. And then when you play on that Monday, you're already getting shortened a day because you're playing on Monday. So when you finish the game, it's already Tuesday. So recovery-wise, it is so tough for players to recover that fast and get ready to play an opponent in less than the 6-day stretch. Not only that, you have to worry about, does your massage therapist have that date free for you, right? Because you're switching days in regards to when you can do certain things as far as aiding in your recovery to play. So it's going to be difficult for the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, this is a team that's full of consummate pros. They've been well tested, but there's also a little bit of luck that goes into having a successful season. Because you have these games on so many different days, they got to be able to recover and stay healthy to go on a stretch run.
Yeah, and I'll just follow that up with just athletes as humans. They are very regimented, very schedule-oriented, and don't like their routine to be disrupted. And this, having this schedule will disrupt your flow. But like Lige said, you have a veteran team. They're consummate pros, and they should be able to adjust. But like Lige said, having 2 Thursday night games in a season, it's hard enough to have one because it takes a little bit of recovery there. But to have 2, man, that's going to be a tough sledding for those guys.
Yeah, and the final 3 games, getting the Commanders twice in those final 3 games, and the season could be up for grabs, is going to be interesting. All right, Lige, I know you have been in between 2 Gators for long enough, so we're going to wrap this segment up. Go Gators. Ran, Lige, we certainly appreciate it. Oh, we got the Gator chomp. It's a beautiful thing to see. Let's turn our attention back to the Eagles and look at the sports line projections. They have them right at around 11 wins. Lige has them at 12 wins to win the division, 68% and 88.8% chance to make the playoffs.